Are electric cars really saving the planet, or is there more to the story than we've been told? The world is shifting toward an all-electric future, with governments, automakers, and environmentalists championing EVs as the ultimate solution to climate change. But beneath the sleek designs and zero-emission claims, there's a reality that often goes unnoticed. Right now, over 27 million electric vehicles are on the roads worldwide, and that number is expected to grow exponentially. Countries like Norway, the Netherlands, and China are aggressively pushing to phase out gas-powered vehicles entirely. The promise? Cleaner air, reduced carbon emissions, and a future free from fossil fuels. But there's a problem. While EVs don't produce tailpipe emissions, their production and energy sources may not be as clean as we think. A Tesla Model 3 or a BMW i4 may look futuristic and efficient, but what's the real environmental cost of making one? Studies show that manufacturing an electric car produces up to twice the carbon emissions of a traditional gasoline vehicle. And then there's the hidden footprint of battery production, electricity generation, and disposal. If an electric vehicle is charged using coal-powered electricity, how green is it really? The controversial truth about EVs: electric cars are marketed as an answer to climate change, but behind the scenes, lithium mining, rare earth metal extraction, and battery disposal are creating a new set of environmental and ethical dilemmas. The demand for lithium, cobalt, and nickel is skyrocketing, and mining operations are leaving behind environmental destruction in places like Chile, Argentina, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Workers face dangerous conditions, ecosystems are being devastated, and the energy required to extract these materials is enormous. Governments are offering massive subsidies and tax incentives to accelerate EV adoption, but are they considering the long-term sustainability of this shift? With the push for more electric cars, the world is becoming increasingly dependent on China, which currently controls over 80% of the global EV battery supply chain. This raises a crucial question: are we simply trading oil dependency for another resource monopoly? What's coming up in this investigation? In this deep dive, we'll break down the real environmental cost of electric cars, explore the hidden problems with battery production, and uncover whether EVs are truly better than traditional gasoline-powered vehicles. We'll look at case studies, hard data, and expert insights to separate fact from marketing hype. We'll examine the dirty secrets of lithium mining, the high energy cost of manufacturing electric vehicles, and the shocking truth about EV battery disposal. We'll also explore alternatives. Are there better, cleaner solutions that don't come with the same hidden costs? By the end of this investigation, you'll have a complete, data-driven picture of what electric vehicles mean for the planet. The question remains: are EVs the green solution we've been promised, or are they just another illusion wrapped in marketing and government policy? The promise of electric vehicles, a future without fossil fuels. The birth of the EV revolution. Electric vehicles were introduced as a solution to one of the biggest challenges humanity has ever faced: climate change. For decades, transportation has been one of the largest contributors to greenhouse gas emissions, responsible for nearly 25% of global CO2 output. Gasoline and diesel-powered cars pump out carbon dioxide, nitrogen oxides, and particulate matter, worsening air quality and accelerating global warming. The idea behind electric vehicles is simple. If we replace internal combustion engines with battery-powered motors, we eliminate emissions at the source. No more tailpipe pollution, no more smog-filled cities, and no more dependence on crude oil. By shifting to electricity, we reduce our reliance on fossil fuels and move toward a cleaner, more sustainable world. Governments, automakers, and environmental organizations quickly embraced the EV movement, pushing policies that favor an all-electric future. Countries like Norway are already leading the charge, with EVs making up over 80% of new car sales in 2023. The European Union, the United States, and China are following suit, setting aggressive targets to phase out gas-powered cars entirely. By 2035, major economies plan to ban the sale of new gasoline vehicles, forcing the transition to electric transportation. But is this transition as green as it seems? The rapid growth of the electric vehicle market, the EV industry has exploded in the last decade. Tesla, BYD, Volkswagen, and General Motors have invested billions into developing electric cars, and sales have skyrocketed. Just 5 years ago, EVs made up less than 2% of global car sales. Today, they account for nearly 15%, and that number is growing fast. China leads the world in EV adoption, selling over 8 million electric vehicles in 2023 alone, more than the rest of the world combined. Europe isn't far behind, with Germany, the UK, and France offering huge incentives to encourage EV purchases. In the United States, Tesla dominates the market, with the Model Y becoming the best-selling car globally in 2023, the first EV to ever claim that title. Major automakers are now racing to keep up. Ford, Mercedes-Benz, Toyota, and BMW are rolling out electric models, while luxury brands like Porsche, Lucid, and Rivian are redefining what high-performance EVs can be. Even legacy gas-powered manufacturers like Ferrari and Lamborghini have announced their transition to electric power. With this level of investment and momentum, it seems like the EV revolution is inevitable. But does widespread adoption automatically mean we're solving the climate crisis? Why people believe EVs are green? The biggest selling point of electric vehicles is their zero tailpipe emissions. Unlike gas-powered cars, EVs don't produce carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxides, or particulate matter, reducing pollution in cities and lowering carbon footprints. This has led many to believe that EVs are completely clean and that replacing gas cars with electric ones will instantly cut emissions. Another major advantage is reduced dependence on gasoline. The world consumes nearly 100 million barrels of oil per day, and a significant portion of that goes to fueling cars. By switching to electricity, we decrease demand for fossil fuels, reducing oil extraction, transportation, and refining, each of which contributes heavily to global warming. There's also the idea that EVs are powered by renewable energy. Solar, wind, and hydroelectric power are growing, and many people assume that charging an EV means using clean electricity instead of fossil fuels. While this is true in some regions, the reality is more complex, as we'll explore later. But are these benefits enough to make EVs a truly sustainable solution? The role of government policies and incentives. One of the biggest reasons for the EV boom isn't just consumer demand, it's government intervention. Countries around the world are pouring billions into tax incentives, subsidies, and regulations to make electric vehicles more accessible and attractive. In the United States, buyers can receive a $7,500 federal tax credit when purchasing a new EV, with some states offering additional incentives. California, the largest auto market in the US, has gone even further, setting a deadline to ban new gas car sales by 2035. In Europe, governments are offering grants and tax breaks to make EVs more affordable. The UK has pledged £1 billion to expand charging infrastructure, while Germany provides up to €9,000 in subsidies per electric vehicle. The EU has also passed strict emissions laws that force automakers to produce more EVs or face heavy fines. China, however, is the biggest player in the EV game. The Chinese government has invested over $60 billion into its electric vehicle industry, heavily subsidizing companies like BYD, NIO, and XPeng. This has made China the world's largest producer and consumer of EVs, with the government setting a goal for EVs to make up 40% of all car sales by 2030. Governments are also investing in charging networks to eliminate range anxiety. The Biden administration has pledged $7.5 billion to build 500,000 charging stations across the US, while Europe and China are expanding their own networks at record speed. With these policies in place, the world is rapidly moving toward an all-electric future. But what happens when we look deeper into the hidden costs of this transition? While EVs are designed to eliminate pollution on the surface, their production, battery supply chains, and reliance on electricity come with unexpected consequences. The real question is, are we solving one environmental crisis while creating another? The hidden environmental cost of EV production. The lithium problem. The price of power. Our electric vehicles run on lithium-ion batteries, the same technology found in smartphones and laptops. But the scale of lithium demand for EVs is far greater. A single Tesla Model S battery requires around 12 kilograms, 26 pounds, of lithium, along with massive amounts of cobalt, nickel, and graphite. With millions of electric cars being produced every year, lithium extraction is skyrocketing. The world's largest lithium reserves are in Chile, Bolivia, and Argentina, known as the Lithium Triangle. These countries supply over 60% of the global lithium market, but at a significant environmental cost. Extracting lithium isn't as clean as it sounds. The process involves pumping saltwater brine from underground, leaving it to evaporate in vast pools, and then extracting lithium from the dried-out minerals. This method requires millions of gallons of water, depleting groundwater supplies in some of the driest regions on Earth. In Chile's Atacama Desert, lithium mining consumes 65% of the region's water supply, leaving local farmers struggling with severe drought conditions. And it doesn't stop at water use. Lithium mining leads to soil degradation, toxic chemical leaks, and air pollution. Studies have found that the lithium extraction process releases arsenic, hydrochloric acid, and heavy metals into nearby water sources, killing aquatic life and contaminating drinking water for local communities. Ironically, while electric vehicles aim to reduce environmental harm, their very foundation, the battery, relies on one of the most environmentally destructive mining processes in the world. Rare earth metals and the ethical dilemma beyond lithium, EV batteries require a cocktail of rare earth metals, including cobalt, nickel, and graphite. These materials are essential for battery performance, but their extraction comes with severe ethical and environmental consequences. Cobalt is one of the most controversial materials in the EV industry. Over 70% of the world's cobalt supply comes from the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, where mining conditions are brutal and dangerous. Reports from Amnesty International and the Washington Post have exposed child labor, inhumane working conditions, and deadly accidents in Congolese cobalt mines. Some miners, including children as young as 7, work in tunnels without proper safety equipment, inhaling toxic dust that leads to fatal lung diseases. Nickel mining, another key component of EV batteries, also comes at a steep cost. Indonesia and the Philippines, two of the world's largest nickel producers, have seen widespread deforestation, air pollution, and heavy metal contamination linked to mining operations. In Indonesia's Sulawesi region, rivers near nickel mines have turned blood red from toxic runoff, killing fish and making water undrinkable. Graphite, used in battery anodes, is predominantly mined in China, Mozambique, and Brazil. In some areas, graphite mining has left entire landscapes barren, with toxic dust polluting the air and causing respiratory diseases in nearby populations. The environmental and human rights abuses tied to rare earth metal extraction paint a different picture from the clean, green future that electric vehicle manufacturers promote. The reality is that the shift to EVs is fueling an extractive industry that places immense strain on the planet and its people. The high carbon footprint of EV manufacturing. Many believe electric cars are automatically better for the planet than gas-powered vehicles, but this assumption ignores the critical part of the equation: manufacturing emissions. Building an EV produces significantly more CO than building a gasoline car. A study by the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, found that manufacturing an electric vehicle generates up to twice the emissions of a conventional gasoline-powered car. The main reason? Battery production. To understand this, let's compare two vehicles: the Tesla Model Y and the Toyota Corolla. The Toyota Corolla, a standard gasoline car, has a total production carbon footprint of around 7 metric tons of CO. The Tesla Model Y, a fully electric SUV, has a manufacturing footprint of 14 metric tons of CO, twice as much as the Corolla. This massive carbon footprint comes from the energy-intensive battery production process, which involves high-temperature smelting, chemical refinement, and global transportation of raw materials. And while the Tesla Model Y produces zero tailpipe emissions, it must be driven for at least 50,000 miles, 80,000 kilometers, before its lower operational emissions offset its high manufacturing footprint. In countries where electricity comes from coal-fired power plants, that break-even point is even longer. This raises a critical question: if EV manufacturing doubles the carbon footprint of production, is it truly a green solution? The hidden pollution of EV factories. Even though EVs eliminate emissions on the road, the factories that produce them still depend heavily on fossil fuels. The majority of battery production takes place in China, South Korea, and Japan, where coal power is a major energy source. In China, where over 60% of electricity still comes from coal, battery factories are some of the largest industrial polluters. Research from the Wall Street Journal found that Chinese battery plants emit more carbon per megawatt-hour than many traditional automakers. Tesla's Gigafactory in Nevada, often marketed as a model of sustainability, still relies on the broader US grid, which includes natural gas and coal-generated electricity. Even as Tesla builds solar power infrastructure, its battery production still requires energy from fossil fuels. In addition to carbon emissions, EV manufacturing generates massive amounts of industrial waste. Producing lithium-ion batteries creates toxic byproducts, including sulfuric acid, ammonia, and heavy metal residues. Without strict regulations, these pollutants can leak into the environment, contaminating soil and water sources. While companies like Tesla, Volkswagen, and GM are investing in greener factories, the reality is that battery production remains one of the most polluting industrial processes in the world. Are EVs really a cleaner alternative? The promise of electric cars is built on reducing emissions, but their manufacturing process tells a different story. While they eliminate tailpipe pollution, their production is tied to destructive mining, high carbon footprints, and factory emissions that are often overlooked in sustainability discussions. This raises a crucial question: are EVs simply shifting pollution from the roads to the mines and factories? While they undoubtedly reduce urban air pollution, the hidden environmental costs of their production make the answer far more complex. For electric cars to truly become a green solution, manufacturers must clean up the supply chain, invest in responsible mining, and transition factories to renewable energy. Until then, the dark side of electric vehicles remains a critical issue that cannot be ignored. The dirty secret of electricity production: EVs still rely on fossil fuels. Electric vehicles are often marketed as clean, zero-emission alternatives to gasoline-powered cars, but what is rarely discussed is the reality of where their energy comes from. While EVs themselves don't produce emissions, the electricity used to charge them often does. Globally, the majority of power grids are still dependent on fossil fuels such as coal, natural gas, and even oil in some regions. This means that every time an electric car is plugged in, there's a high chance that the energy used to charge it was generated by burning fossil fuels. Coal remains the world's largest source of electricity, accounting for nearly 36% of global power production. Natural gas, another major source, accounts for roughly 23%. Together, these fossil fuel sources dominate the world's electricity supply, making it difficult to argue that electric vehicles are truly green when they are indirectly powered by the same carbon-intensive processes they claim to eliminate. In countries like China and India, where coal is still the backbone of the energy sector, an EV charging at night may have a carbon footprint nearly as high as a gasoline-powered car. Germany provides a case study in how energy policy can impact the sustainability of electric vehicles. Once a global leader in clean energy, Germany made the controversial decision to phase out nuclear power in favor of renewable energy. However, when renewable energy sources failed to meet demand, the country found itself increasingly reliant on coal-fired power plants. As a result, German EV owners began charging their cars using electricity that was dirtier than before. The shift away from nuclear inadvertently increased carbon emissions in the short term, revealing a critical flaw in the assumption that EVs are only as clean as the power grids that sustain them. How clean is renewable energy? The transition to electric vehicles is often linked to the expansion of renewable energy sources such as wind and solar. While these alternatives are certainly cleaner than fossil fuels, they come with their own environmental challenges. Solar panels and wind turbines require vast amounts of land, raw materials, and industrial infrastructure. Mining the rare earth metals necessary for renewable energy production creates additional environmental damage, contributing to soil degradation, water contamination, and toxic waste. Wind energy is frequently promoted as a sustainable power source, but wind farms require enormous amounts of neodymium and dysprosium, two rare earth metals that are predominantly mined in China. The extraction and refinement of these elements produce radioactive waste, raising concerns about the hidden environmental costs of building clean energy infrastructure. Similarly, large-scale solar panel production relies on materials such as silicon, silver, and cadmium, all of which have their own environmental footprints. There is also the issue of energy storage. Because wind and solar are intermittent sources of power, they require backup energy storage in the form of massive battery systems. These batteries, much like those in electric vehicles, depend on lithium, cobalt, and nickel, further contributing to the same mining-related problems that EVs already face. In regions where renewables are not yet fully integrated into the grid, electric vehicles may still be drawing electricity from gas or coal power plants, meaning their emissions are simply being shifted rather than eliminated. Charging infrastructure and energy demand. One of the biggest challenges facing the widespread adoption of electric vehicles is the strain they place on existing power grids. Unlike gasoline, which can be transported and stored relatively easily, electricity must be generated and delivered in real time. The current grid infrastructure in many countries is not designed to handle the rapid increase in energy demand that comes with mass EV adoption. California, one of the most EV-friendly states in the US, has already experienced power grid failures due to increased demand from electric vehicle charging. In the summer of 2022, a heat wave led to rolling blackouts across the state, and residents were urged to avoid charging their EVs during peak hours. This incident highlighted a growing problem. As more people switch to electric vehicles, existing grids must be significantly upgraded to prevent widespread energy shortages. Texas has faced similar challenges. In February 2021, a winter storm crippled the state's power grid, leaving millions without electricity for days. The crisis exposed vulnerabilities in Texas's energy infrastructure, raising concerns about the grid's ability to support large-scale EV charging. If a few million electric vehicles were to be plugged in simultaneously, the demand surge could push grids beyond their capacity, causing further instability. The infrastructure issue extends beyond just electricity generation. Charging stations themselves require significant investment and expansion. Currently, the number of public charging stations is far below what is needed to support the rapid growth of EV ownership. In many regions, charging an EV still takes significantly longer than refueling a gas-powered car, leading to congestion at charging points. Additionally, many fast charging stations are powered by diesel generators, further undermining the claim that electric vehicles are a zero-emission solution. The push for electric vehicles is based on the assumption that power grids will quickly transition to cleaner energy sources. However, in many parts of the world, that transition is slow and fraught with challenges. Until electricity production is fully decarbonized, the reality remains that EVs are only as green as the energy that powers them. If that energy still comes from coal, oil, or natural gas, then the environmental benefits of electric cars become far less certain. The battery disposal and recycling crisis. The problem with used EV batteries. Electric vehicles are often praised for eliminating tailpipe emissions, but one of the most overlooked environmental challenges is what happens to their batteries once they reach the end of their lifespan. Unlike gasoline-powered cars, which can be scrapped and recycled with relative ease, electric vehicles rely on lithium-ion batteries, which do not decompose and are extremely difficult to recycle. With the rapid expansion of the EV market, millions of lithium-ion batteries will need to be disposed of in the coming years. Yet, only 5% of EV batteries are currently recycled. This means the vast majority of used batteries either end up in landfills or are stockpiled in warehouses with no long-term plan for disposal. The complexity of EV battery design is a major barrier to effective recycling. Each battery contains a mix of lithium, cobalt, nickel, and other rare earth metals, which are tightly packed together in a chemical structure that makes separation difficult. Unlike lead-acid car batteries, which have a well-established recycling process with a 98% success rate, lithium-ion batteries require costly, labor-intensive procedures to break them down. As more electric vehicles hit the road, the world is on the brink of a battery waste crisis. If the current trend continues, global landfills could be flooded with millions of spent EV batteries, creating a long-term environmental hazard that no one is fully prepared to handle. Toxic waste and environmental damage. The improper disposal of lithium-ion batteries poses serious environmental risks, with toxic chemicals leaching into soil and groundwater. Unlike biodegradable materials, battery waste contains hazardous heavy metals, flammable electrolytes, and corrosive chemicals, which do not break down naturally over time. China, the world's largest EV producer, is already seeing the consequences of poor battery waste management. Case studies have shown that abandoned battery dumps in Shenzhen and Guangzhou have created severe contamination issues, poisoning nearby water sources and agricultural land. In some cases, locals have reported higher rates of respiratory diseases and soil degradation due to exposure to heavy metals from decomposing battery components. Beyond chemical pollution, the risk of battery fires is a growing concern. Lithium-ion batteries are highly reactive and can spontaneously ignite when damaged or improperly stored. Unlike traditional fires, battery fires are notoriously difficult to extinguish, often requiring thousands of gallons of water to cool down a single burning unit. In the United States, several incidents have already raised alarms about the dangers of abandoned EV batteries. In 2022, a fire broke out in a California recycling facility, burning for days and releasing toxic fumes into the air. Experts warn that as more lithium-ion batteries are discarded, these fire hazards could become a public safety crisis, particularly in regions that lack proper disposal facilities. The reality is that the EV industry has not yet developed a sustainable solution for battery waste. While new technology is being explored, the current system is largely unprepared for the wave of discarded EV batteries that will inevitably flood landfills in the coming decades. Recycling versus new battery production. Recycling lithium-ion batteries is theoretically possible, but in practice, it remains far more expensive than simply mining new materials. This economic imbalance means that, in most cases, it is more profitable to extract fresh lithium, cobalt, and nickel from the earth than to invest in the labor-intensive process of recovering them from old batteries. The primary method of lithium-ion battery recycling involves shredding the batteries into small fragments before chemically processing the recovered metals. However, the energy required to do this is enormous, making the process both costly and environmentally intensive. A major issue with the current approach is that many EV batteries are not designed with recycling in mind. Unlike traditional lead-acid batteries, which are built for easy disassembly, modern lithium-ion packs are complex, containing hundreds of individual cells encased in protective materials. Extracting valuable metals from these cells is both dangerous and inefficient, often requiring hazardous chemical treatments that produce additional waste. Another challenge is that battery technology is evolving rapidly. Each generation of EV batteries is different from the last, meaning recycling methods must constantly adapt. This makes it difficult to establish a universal recycling system, further discouraging companies from investing in large-scale battery recovery operations. For automakers, the financial incentive to recycle remains low. With growing demand for electric vehicles, companies are focused on producing new batteries as quickly and cheaply as possible, rather than building sustainable recycling infrastructure. As a result, the world is stuck in a loop where old EV batteries pile up, while new ones are constantly manufactured, driving even more mining and resource depletion. Are solid-state batteries the solution? Some experts believe that solid-state battery technology could be the key to solving the EV battery waste crisis. Unlike traditional lithium-ion batteries, solid-state batteries replace liquid electrolytes with solid materials, making them more stable, efficient, and potentially easier to recycle. Automakers like Toyota, Volkswagen, and QuantumScape are heavily investing in solid-state technology, claiming that these next-generation batteries will extend EV lifespans, improve safety, and reduce reliance on rare earth metals. With a projected 50% increase in energy density, solid-state batteries could also allow electric cars to drive longer distances on a single charge, reducing the need for frequent battery replacements. However, solid-state technology is still in its early stages, and mass production remains a challenge. Manufacturing solid-state batteries requires new materials, specialized equipment, and extensive testing, making it far more expensive than conventional lithium-ion production. Even if the technology proves viable, it could take years or even decades before solid-state batteries become widely available. There are also concerns that solid-state batteries may not entirely eliminate the resource dependency of EV production. While they reduce the need for some rare earth metals, they still require lithium, nickel, and other critical materials, meaning that mining operations will continue, albeit at a reduced scale. Ultimately, solid-state batteries represent a promising but incomplete solution. While they could help reduce waste and improve recyclability, they do not fully address the underlying issue of EV battery disposal. Without a comprehensive plan for handling old batteries, the world will continue to face a growing crisis of toxic waste, environmental contamination, and unsustainable resource consumption. The electric vehicle revolution is well underway, but unless drastic action is taken, the industry's dirty secret of battery disposal will remain an unsolved problem. The economic and social costs of EVs. Are EVs actually affordable? Electric vehicles are often promoted as the future of transportation, but affordability remains one of the biggest obstacles to widespread adoption. While prices have gradually decreased over the years, EVs still carry a significantly higher upfront cost compared to gasoline-powered cars. A brand new electric vehicle, such as a Tesla Model 3, starts at around $40,000, while a gasoline-powered Toyota Corolla costs nearly half that. Even with government subsidies, EVs remain out of reach for many middle-class and low-income families. Beyond the initial price tag, there are hidden costs that many consumers fail to consider. Battery replacements can be extraordinarily expensive, with a new EV battery pack costing between $10,000 and $20,000 depending on the model. While manufacturers claim that EV batteries can last 100,000 to 200,000 miles, real-world data shows that battery degradation can significantly impact resale value, making used electric cars a risky investment. Insurance costs for EVs are also notably higher than for gasoline vehicles. Due to the expensive and complex nature of battery repairs, insurance companies charge higher premiums to cover potential risks. According to recent studies, electric vehicle owners pay on average 25% more for insurance than their gasoline-powered counterparts. Maintenance costs are another concern. While EVs require fewer moving parts than traditional internal combustion engine vehicles, specialized repair services can be difficult to find, and replacement parts remain costly. In many cases, a minor issue with an EV's battery or software system can require entire module replacements, increasing the overall cost of ownership. These economic barriers highlight a crucial issue. While EVs are marketed as a cleaner and more efficient alternative, they are not yet a financially viable option for the average consumer. The promise of an all-electric future assumes that prices will continue to drop, but as the demand for raw materials increases and supply chain disruptions continue, affordability may remain a challenge for years to come. Who really benefits from EV policies? Government incentives and subsidies have played a crucial role in accelerating EV adoption, but these policies primarily benefit wealthier consumers who can afford to buy new electric cars. In countries like the United States, Germany, and the United Kingdom, EV buyers receive thousands of dollars in tax credits, while lower-income families, who cannot afford a new EV, are left out of the equation. Studies have shown that the majority of EV buyers belong to higher income brackets, with many already owning at least one gasoline-powered vehicle. In contrast, those who rely on older, fuel-efficient cars receive no financial incentives to transition. This has created a disparity where government funds are being used to subsidize new car purchases for the wealthy, rather than developing sustainable transportation options for all. The push for EV adoption has also led to the elimination of incentives for hybrid vehicles, which were once seen as a stepping stone toward full electrification. Hybrids offer better affordability and fuel efficiency, yet they are now being phased out in favor of policies that exclusively promote fully electric cars. This approach ignores the fact that hybrids could provide a more accessible transition for millions of drivers, rather than forcing them into expensive, fully electric alternatives. As EV mandates continue to expand, low-income families are also impacted by rising electricity costs. Increased demand for power grids has led to higher utility bills, further increasing the financial burden on households that cannot afford to upgrade to an EV. This growing inequality raises an important question: is the transition to electric vehicles truly about sustainability, or is it simply favoring those who can afford to participate? Job losses in the auto industry. The shift to electric vehicles is not only transforming the car industry but also reshaping the job market in ways that few anticipated. While EVs are often praised for their efficiency, their simpler design means that they require fewer moving parts than gasoline-powered cars. A traditional internal combustion engine vehicle has over 2,000 components, while an electric motor has fewer than 20. This drastic reduction in parts translates to less labor needed for assembly, repairs, and maintenance, a major concern for the global auto workforce. In the United States, Ford and General Motors have already announced thousands of layoffs as they restructure their operations to focus on electric vehicle production. In 2023, Ford laid off 3,000 workers, citing the transition to EVs as a primary reason. General Motors followed suit, cutting jobs in Michigan and Ohio as part of its long-term electrification strategy. The job losses extend beyond automakers. The entire automotive supply chain, including parts manufacturers, mechanics, and dealership service workers, faces an uncertain future. A mechanic who specializes in transmissions, exhaust systems, or fuel injection repair may find their skills increasingly obsolete in an EV-dominated world. The economic ripple effect is also being felt in oil-producing regions. States like Texas and North Dakota, which have historically relied on the oil and gas industry, are seeing reduced demand for petroleum, which could lead to further job losses in fossil fuel-dependent economies. While new jobs are being created in EV battery production and software engineering, they often require specialized skills and training, making it difficult for displaced workers to transition smoothly. The push toward an all-electric future is not just an environmental shift. It is a major labor disruption that could leave thousands of workers without employment if proper retraining programs are not implemented. Geopolitical dependence on China. The transition to electric vehicles is often framed as a move toward energy independence, but in reality, it is shifting dependence from oil-producing nations to mineral-rich countries like China. Unlike gasoline, which is extracted and refined in multiple regions around the world, the supply chain for EV batteries is heavily concentrated in a handful of countries, with China dominating the global market. China currently controls over 80% of the world's EV battery production and 70% of lithium refining operations. This dominance gives China an unprecedented level of control over the global electric vehicle supply chain. Western nations that once relied on oil imports are now finding themselves dependent on Chinese lithium, cobalt, and battery manufacturing. The imbalance in supply chain control has already created geopolitical tensions. The United States and Europe have introduced incentives for domestic battery production, but breaking China's dominance is proving difficult. Mining operations in North America and Australia are struggling to compete with China's low-cost labor and government-backed production facilities. In response, the Biden administration has introduced measures like the Inflation Reduction Act, which offers subsidies for EVs built with locally sourced materials. However, the reality remains that most of the critical raw materials still originate from Chinese-controlled mines. This shift raises important concerns about national security and economic stability. In the event of political conflicts or trade disputes, China could restrict exports of key battery components, causing major disruptions to the global EV industry. The recent China-US trade tensions have already demonstrated how fragile the global supply chain can be, with price spikes in lithium and nickel impacting vehicle production worldwide. The world's move away from fossil fuels does not mean complete energy independence. It simply creates a new form of dependency. The challenge now is whether Western nations can build their own supply chains or if the EV revolution will leave them permanently reliant on Chinese battery production. As the world moves toward widespread EV adoption, the economic and social consequences are becoming clearer. Electric vehicles are changing who can afford to drive, who benefits from government policies, and who controls the resources needed for transportation. While the environmental benefits of EVs are widely discussed, the economic disruptions they bring remain a largely overlooked aspect of this transition. The question is not just whether EVs are green, but also whether they are economically sustainable for the average person. The EV greenwashing controversy. Car companies and greenwashing tactics. The electric vehicle revolution has been marketed as the ultimate solution to climate change, with automakers promising a cleaner, greener future. But behind the glossy advertisements and futuristic car models lies a harsh reality. Many companies are overstating the environmental benefits of EVs, engaging in a practice known as greenwashing. Greenwashing occurs when companies exaggerate or misrepresent the sustainability of their products to appeal to environmentally conscious consumers. In the case of electric vehicles, manufacturers often emphasize zero tailpipe emissions while ignoring the significant environmental impact of battery production, mining, and electricity generation. One of the most notorious examples of corporate deception in the auto industry is Volkswagen's diesel emissions scandal. For years, Volkswagen marketed its diesel cars as clean and environmentally friendly, only for investigations to reveal that the company had installed illegal software to cheat emissions tests. The so-called clean diesel vehicles were, in reality, emitting up to 40 times the legal limit of nitrogen oxides. While the Volkswagen scandal involved diesel cars, the same pattern of misleading environmental claims is now being observed in the electric vehicle industry. Tesla, one of the biggest names in EV manufacturing, has benefited enormously from selling carbon credits to other automakers. Under emissions trading schemes, companies that produce zero-emission vehicles can sell carbon credits to those that fail to meet environmental standards. This system allows traditional automakers to continue producing gasoline and diesel vehicles while purchasing Tesla's carbon credits to offset their emissions on paper. Tesla made nearly $2 billion in carbon credit sales in 2022 alone, despite the fact that many of its vehicles still depend on fossil fuel-based electricity for charging. While Tesla presents itself as a leader in clean energy, much of its profit has come from an emissions credit system that enables other automakers to delay the transition to sustainable transportation. Automakers across the board use selective messaging to paint EVs as a perfect solution while downplaying their real-world environmental costs. Terms like zero emissions and carbon neutral dominate marketing campaigns, even though these vehicles require intensive mining operations, fossil fuel-generated electricity, and complex recycling processes that all contribute to pollution. Government greenwashing and unrealistic goals. Governments worldwide have joined in on the EV greenwashing trend, setting ambitious mandates for full electrification while still relying heavily on fossil fuel-based power grids. Many countries claim they are moving toward a clean energy future, but the numbers tell a different story. One of the most successful EV adoption stories comes from Norway, where electric cars now make up over 80% of new vehicle sales. Norway's success is often highlighted as proof that full electrification is possible. However, what is often overlooked is that Norway's power grid is almost entirely hydroelectric, meaning that EVs in Norway are truly powered by renewable energy. The same cannot be said for most other countries, where coal and natural gas still dominate the energy mix. In the United States, for example, nearly 60% of electricity still comes from fossil fuels, meaning that many EVs on the road are indirectly powered by coal and natural gas. This creates a paradox. While individual electric vehicles don't produce tailpipe emissions, the energy used to charge them still contributes to carbon pollution. California, one of the most aggressive states in pushing for EV adoption, has faced repeated grid failures and rolling blackouts due to energy demand exceeding supply. In response, state officials have urged residents to avoid charging their electric cars during peak hours, highlighting the infrastructure problems that come with large-scale EV deployment. Another example of government greenwashing is the European Union's 2035 ban on new gasoline and diesel cars. While this policy is intended to accelerate the transition to electric vehicles, it fails to address how the electricity to power these EVs will be generated. Unless grid infrastructure is modernized and fossil fuel dependency is reduced, the transition to EVs will not deliver the environmental benefits that policymakers claim. These examples reveal the gap between government pledges and real-world execution. The push for electric vehicles is not always backed by a fully sustainable energy system, leading to a situation where EVs are branded as green despite their reliance on polluting energy sources. The EV lifespan myth. Another misleading claim frequently made by EV manufacturers is the long lifespan of electric vehicle batteries. While automakers advertise that EV batteries can last hundreds of thousands of miles, real-world data suggests that battery degradation is a significant issue that affects both performance and resale value. Unlike gasoline-powered cars, which can operate for decades with regular maintenance, EV batteries degrade over time, leading to reduced range and costly replacements. Studies show that lithium-ion batteries lose approximately 2.3% of their capacity per year, meaning that an EV that originally had a 300-mile range may only get 225 miles after a decade of use. Tesla owners have reported that their batteries lose up to 30% of their capacity after just 5 years, significantly reducing the car's driving range. While some EV models offer battery replacements, the cost of a new battery pack can range between $10,000 and $20,000, making it an expensive repair that many consumers cannot afford. Battery degradation also affects resale value, creating a secondary market where used electric cars are far less desirable than their gasoline counterparts. In contrast, a well-maintained gasoline-powered vehicle can continue running for 20 years or more, with engine repairs costing far less than full battery replacements. These factors challenge the common perception that EVs are built to last longer than traditional cars. While electric motors require fewer moving parts and less maintenance, battery life remains a major limitation. Consumers purchasing an EV today may find themselves facing high replacement costs down the line, raising questions about whether electric vehicles are truly a long-term solution or just a temporary fix with hidden drawbacks. The myth of everlasting EV batteries is yet another example of how electric vehicles are marketed as more durable and cost-effective than they really are. Without significant advancements in battery longevity and affordability, many early adopters of EVs may soon discover that their investment is not as sustainable as they were led to believe. The conversation around electric vehicles needs to be more transparent. Car companies, governments, and environmental groups must acknowledge the hidden costs and limitations of EV technology instead of painting an overly optimistic picture. Until the industry addresses battery production, recycling, grid reliability, and realistic lifespan expectations, the narrative of EVs as a flawless green solution remains nothing more than well-packaged greenwashing. The alternatives. Are there better solutions? Hydrogen fuel cells, a cleaner but costly alternative. While electric vehicles have dominated discussions about sustainable transportation, hydrogen fuel cell technology has quietly emerged as a promising alternative. Hydrogen-powered cars produce zero tailpipe emissions, emitting only water vapor instead of carbon dioxide. Unlike battery-powered EVs, which rely on heavy lithium-ion batteries, hydrogen fuel cell vehicles generate electricity through a chemical reaction between hydrogen and oxygen, providing longer driving ranges and faster refueling times. Toyota and Honda have been at the forefront of hydrogen vehicle development, with models like the Toyota Mirai and Honda Clarity fuel cell demonstrating the potential of hydrogen-powered cars. Unlike traditional EVs, which require hours to recharge, hydrogen vehicles can refuel in just a few minutes, making them far more convenient for long-distance travel. However, hydrogen fuel cells come with significant challenges. Producing hydrogen is still an energy-intensive process, with most of the world's hydrogen supply coming from natural gas, which still emits carbon dioxide. A cleaner alternative known as green hydrogen, which is produced using electrolysis powered by renewable energy, is available but remains prohibitively expensive. Another major obstacle is hydrogen infrastructure. Unlike EV charging stations, which are becoming more widespread, hydrogen refueling stations are rare and expensive to build. In the United States, there are only about 60 public hydrogen stations, most of them concentrated in California. Without significant investment in infrastructure, hydrogen fuel cell vehicles will struggle to compete with EVs on a large scale. Despite these challenges, hydrogen remains one of the most viable long-term alternatives to battery-powered EVs. If advancements in green hydrogen production and refueling networks continue, fuel cell vehicles could provide a more practical and sustainable option for the future. Synthetic fuels and carbon-neutral gasoline, a new hope for gas engines. While governments push for an all-electric future, some automakers are investing in synthetic fuels, a technology that allows gasoline engines to operate with near-zero carbon emissions. Synthetic fuels, also known as e-fuels, are created by capturing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and combining it with hydrogen to produce a liquid fuel that can power traditional internal combustion engines. Porsche has been leading the charge in developing e-fuels, with a $75 million investment in a synthetic fuel production facility in Chile. The company claims that e-fuels can be dropped into existing gasoline cars, providing a cleaner alternative without requiring new infrastructure or massive battery production. Unlike EVs, which require rare earth metals and lithium mining, synthetic fuels allow existing gas-powered vehicles to run on a renewable, carbon-neutral energy source. One of the biggest advantages of e-fuels is that they utilize existing fuel distribution networks, meaning that gas stations could remain operational without major changes. This approach could help reduce emissions without forcing drivers to buy expensive new EVs. However, synthetic fuels are still in their early stages and face major cost challenges. Producing e-fuels currently requires large amounts of renewable electricity, making them far more expensive than traditional gasoline. Additionally, while e-fuels significantly reduce carbon emissions, they are not entirely emission-free, as combustion engines still produce nitrogen oxides and particulates. If Porsche and other automakers can scale production and lower costs, synthetic fuels could provide a bridge solution for people who want to reduce their carbon footprint without abandoning gasoline-powered cars altogether. Hybrid cars as a middle ground. With the debate between EVs, hydrogen, and synthetic fuels heating up, hybrid vehicles remain a practical and accessible middle ground. Hybrid cars combine a gasoline engine with an electric motor, allowing for better fuel efficiency and lower emissions compared to traditional gas-powered vehicles. The Toyota Prius has been one of the most successful hybrid models for over 2 decades, providing a reliable and fuel-efficient alternative without the range anxiety of a fully electric car. Unlike EVs, which rely entirely on charging infrastructure, hybrids can switch between gasoline and electric power, making them more practical for drivers who don't have access to charging stations. Comparing the Toyota Prius to the Tesla Model 3 highlights key differences in long-term sustainability. While the Model 3 produces zero emissions while driving, its battery manufacturing process and reliance on lithium mining create significant environmental concerns. In contrast, the Prius, which requires a much smaller battery, reduces fuel consumption while minimizing the need for extensive mining and rare earth materials. Hybrids are also more affordable than most EVs. The average price of a new hybrid car is significantly lower than a fully electric model, making it more accessible to a wider range of consumers. Additionally, because hybrids do not rely entirely on battery power, they avoid the expensive battery replacement costs associated with EVs. While hybrids are not a perfect solution, they offer a practical compromise that reduces emissions while avoiding some of the biggest drawbacks of electric vehicles. If automakers continue improving hybrid technology, they could serve as a viable alternative for drivers who are not yet ready to commit to a fully electric future. Public transportation and urban planning. Are we focused on the wrong solution? While the world debates whether EVs, hydrogen, or synthetic fuels are the best alternative to gasoline, some experts argue that we are asking the wrong question. Instead of focusing solely on making cars cleaner, perhaps we should be rethinking car dependency altogether. Investing in public transportation and urban planning could have a much greater impact on reducing emissions than replacing gas-powered cars with EVs. Countries with extensive public transit systems, such as Japan, Germany, and the Netherlands, have lower per capita emissions because fewer people rely on cars for daily travel. High-speed trains, subways, and buses allow millions of people to commute without owning a car, significantly reducing overall emissions. In the United States, where car culture dominates, cities are designed around automobiles, making public transit less efficient. Instead of pouring billions into EV subsidies, some experts suggest that governments should focus on expanding rail networks, bus systems, and bike lanes to provide viable alternatives to car ownership. If more people had access to efficient public transportation, the need for individual vehicles, electric or otherwise, would dramatically decrease. Urban planning also plays a crucial role in reducing emissions. Cities with walkable neighborhoods, mixed-use developments, and improved cycling infrastructure encourage people to drive less, reducing traffic congestion and pollution. One of the biggest criticisms of the EV push is that it doesn't address the root cause of transportation emissions: our reliance on personal vehicles. Even if all cars were electric, the environmental impact of manufacturing millions of vehicles, building charging stations, and producing batteries would still be massive. Instead of simply replacing gas-powered cars with EVs, a shift toward better public transportation, city planning, and sustainable mobility solutions could be a far more effective approach to reducing carbon emissions in the long run. The world is racing toward a future without gasoline, but there is no single solution that fits every need. Hydrogen fuel cells offer a promising alternative but remain expensive and underdeveloped. Synthetic fuels provide a way to keep gas-powered cars on the road, but they still have challenges related to scalability and emissions. Hybrid cars offer a practical compromise, but they still rely on fossil fuels. Investing in public transportation and urban infrastructure could reduce the need for personal vehicles altogether, offering a solution that goes beyond the question of which type of car is best. The debate over electric vehicles versus other alternatives is far from over. What is clear, however, is that the current push for EVs as the only solution may not be the most effective path to a truly sustainable future. Instead of placing all bets on battery-powered cars, a more diverse and balanced approach may be the key to reducing emissions and building a cleaner transportation system for future generations. The future of EVs, is there hope? Electric vehicles have positioned themselves as the frontrunners in the transition to a cleaner and more sustainable transportation system. There is no denying their benefits. EVs produce zero tailpipe emissions, reduce air pollution in urban areas, and help cut overall carbon footprints when charged with renewable energy. They also promise greater energy efficiency and could lead to a world that is less dependent on oil, reducing geopolitical tensions related to fossil fuel supplies. However, the hidden costs of electric vehicles cannot be ignored. The process of lithium and rare earth metal extraction devastates ecosystems, battery production emits massive amounts of CO, and the current electric grid still depends heavily on fossil fuels, making EVs far from truly clean. Battery disposal and recycling challenges remain unsolved, and the economic and social impacts, from job losses in the auto industry to the economic dependency on China's battery supply, raise serious questions about whether EVs alone can solve our transportation crisis. What needs to change? If electric vehicles are to become a truly sustainable solution, several critical changes must happen. Governments must invest not just in EV subsidies, but also in renewable energy expansion to ensure that electric cars are not running on coal and gas-powered electricity. More focus should be placed on battery innovation, with research into solid-state batteries, sodium-ion alternatives, and sustainable mining practices to reduce environmental harm. A real solution must also address the growing battery waste problem. The industry needs a scalable, cost-effective recycling system that ensures old batteries don't pile up in landfills but are reused and repurposed to minimize the need for new mining operations. Without this, EVs will only shift environmental destruction from oil fields to lithium mines. Infrastructure must also evolve. The global electric grid must be upgraded to handle high-demand charging, preventing outages and instability. Public transportation and urban planning need to be prioritized, reducing the overall reliance on private vehicles instead of simply replacing gasoline cars with electric ones. Are electric vehicles truly the future, or are they simply another industrial hype wrapped in sustainability branding? The answer is not black and white. While EVs offer significant advantages over gasoline cars, their current production methods and infrastructure create new environmental and economic challenges that cannot be ignored. The key takeaway is that electric vehicles alone are not enough. A multifaceted approach is needed, one that includes better battery technology, sustainable mining, cleaner energy grids, improved recycling systems, and stronger investment in public transportation. Only then can we move toward a future that is not just electric, but truly sustainable. What do you think? Are EVs the ultimate solution, or is the world heading down the wrong path? Share your thoughts in the comments, and let's continue this important discussion.